This is not Patrick.
Everybody, welcome to Northside Now, the podcast where Patrick usually introduces everything and then we talk about a topic. But Patrick is not here this week, and so while the cat's away, the mice will play.
And so everyone get ready because it's happened. He's married.
Yay!
Patrick and Elizabeth got married. They're married. They're off on the honeymoon.
Yeah, we're really excited for him.
We really are.
We've been talking about this for months. It's like, come on, get here already. Yeah. And I'm sure maybe that's how they felt a little bit. But enjoying some time together. And we look forward to when they make their way back. And it's always uplifting for me to go to weddings.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
In today's culture where, you know, being married is something different and not always maybe what I think it should be. So it's one of those sacraments, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So in the churchy word, where you can experience God. So it's always fun to go to those. Yeah,
the wedding was awesome, and beautiful bride and a handsome, dashing gentleman of a groom there. And
yes.
So it was fun to be with the families and have the whole experience, but we're really interested for him to get back and let us know how that Maine lobster was. And so, because they're going up there to the Northeast to experience all that. He's talked about that. And
I'm telling you, when we went up, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it really was.
Especially in the middle of summer when it's warm down here. It's got to be a little cooler up there. So, so excited for Patrick and Elizabeth. Met right here in good old Northside, and you know, I feel somewhat responsible for this, so it better last.
Yeah, that's right. Your reputation is on the line now. So
excited for them, and we do miss him today because he has all this down pat and makes it look really easy while we're over there shuffling through papers and trying to figure out what in the world we're going to say. He's over here playing with buttons and stuff, and we learned something about our board today. Is you can unplug and plug everything in. All you got to do is turn it off and on. It'll crank right back up and work again. We thought we had a detrimental issue.
Yeah, you know, it could be the similar story with a laptop or some other thing. I tend to think about it. Computers, of course, a lot of the equipment that we use now, whether it be a car or anything else, is a big computer, right?
Exactly.
So maybe the lesson is something doesn't work, you just turn it off and you turn it back on and everything's going to be fine.
Well, we had done everything else until you said, have you turned it off? Nope. And all we were trying to do is contact our special guest today.
Yes,
with the phone, and we've done this before. Of course, we talked to Sarah on the trail, and
right.
But we did that through Bluetooth. And today I thought there is a way to plug the phone into the board, and I thought, well, that would just make so much more sense. It'll sound better, maybe, and all this. And well, that just caused all kinds of issues. I'm glad I came early too,
Yeah, we're going to call him in just a little bit. We got all that worked out.
We are excited.
And I guess we've sort of teased it before anyway.
We have. And you know this guy.
I do know this person. He is my brother, youngest brother, Ted Bryant. It's actually Dr. Ted Bryant. So I don't know. I'll try. I guess I'll try and call him that.
Doc. What's up, Doc?
Exactly. But he, interesting story. I don't know how much we'll get into it or not, but he wasn't always a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he went to Notre Dame for his graduate work in psychology, and that's where he got his doctorate. And he was a professor for a long time
at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
really.
I wouldn't say it necessarily a long time. I don't remember how much that was, but he taught at another university up there, and then actually was at Notre Dame for a while.
He's too young to know Rudy, isn't he?
Yes, yes. But I can remember conversations, and it's probably been 10 years ago, maybe about 10, when he joined the staff of the church where he is now. And that's probably the closest person to my family that's been a pastor, and I've had conversations about a calling and just feeling really led to that kind of ministry and work. So, yeah, he's a pastor there. He's just over a year now, maybe 18 months, the lead pastor at that church up in northern Indiana. So I'd be really excited to talk to him about a whole host of things, not the least of which being, church growth and They were in a similar situation in terms of denomination, de-affiliation, I guess.
Yeah.
And so that might come up too, I'm sure. But the thing I know is he could kind of talk forever. So,
I'm interested now that we've kind of had this conversation. I wonder how many kids from Northside in the 61, 2 years, or I know it's more than that, of its complete existence. How many kids that were in Vacation Bible School, which is coming up soon, or camp, but they just grew up here.
Right.
Everybody knew them, scratched them on the head when they walked down the hall. Right. Hey, boy, what are you doing? Or hey, girl. I wonder how many of them are pastors now.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I'm trying to think. There's a few. Like I know Ben Stillwell was doing missionary work for a long time. Yeah,
and he's a pastor.
And
I know somebody that works for, I just went blank, but he works for Young Life down in Georgia, I think. So,
that would be a good conversation to figure that out.
We need to know that. We need to know how many pastors we have that have come out of this church. Whether they intended to or someone planted a seed in their life. Someone developed a relationship with them, and then poof, somewhere it blossomed and grew.
Yep. So, and we're not in control of the end result.
We're not.
But we have a whole lot of opportunity and power to
start it. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course it doesn't have to just be with kids, right?
No. I mean,
and that's one of the things I really want to discuss is one of the passions that Ted has, and I know this from conversations that we've had, is really focusing on, and I hesitate to even say it because a lot of people, it's sort of a catchphrase, and catchphrases to me without meat behind it or without the right intentions are just empty. But, reaching the unchurched is kind of one of those catchphrases. Mm-hmm. But for him, I feel like it's not like this special thing that they do.
Yeah.
It's a outgrowth of understanding the relationship that Jesus had with anybody that he met.
Yeah.
It really wasn't about what group you belong to, or if you know the books of the Bible, or if you've even heard about Jesus at all or not. It's about where everybody is at a given time and what is meaningful in their life and how Christ can meet that person in whatever circumstance they are and bring their life meaning. And in the process, that person can be freed. Right?
Yeah.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so, yes, our mission is to talk to anybody about Christ. Sure. And I think we'll get into this, about being compelled to share. And it's not because time's running out or, the end times are near and those kinds of things, which I tend to hear a lot. It's because we just can't help it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
what we're called to do. Everybody. It's not just pastors, not just.
So anyway, we could talk for forever before we even call it. But
we're going to give him a buzz here. It's going to start ringing here in a second. And he is at Granger Community Church up north.
That's right.
I think he's going to tell us exactly where he's at because, probably, but I have really no idea. So let's see if we can get this phone working here. Here we go.
Hello, this is Ted.
Well, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Afternoon. How are you?
Good. This is Glenn and the bro.
Hey there, Ted. The bro.
Hey, buddy.
Dr. Ted Bryant, it is so good to talk to you.
Hey, thanks.
We are excited to get to spend some time with you this afternoon. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us. And I know you're a big podcast listener, especially to this one. So,
yeah.
Right.
So how shocked were you when your brother called and said, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast at church"?
Oh, I knew that he's been working on some things. One thing I know about my brother is that regardless of what his official job is, there is always going to be some sort of variety of multimedia involvement across probably multiple mediums, and whenever he can, he's going to be behind a microphone or a camera or have a microphone or camera in his face. One of those two things are going to be happening.
Well, you know him well.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
We understand that not too long ago, I'm sure Kevin's told you that our church has gone through all kinds of transition in the last couple of years, really, but really over the last year. We left our denomination and COVID hit, and just a few weeks ago was our pastor's, who's been here for 20 years, last Sunday. So we've been through a little transition, and Kevin has told us that you have undergone similar transitions in your church. And so we would like to visit about that today for sure.
Sure. That's great.
Yeah. One of the things that when we were doing our planning and talking through is several things, but as we go into this transition, we knew that it was coming. And so that was helpful for a lot of different reasons, not only just physical transition with leadership and all that, but also for the congregation just to get used to the fact that, something new is coming. Mm-hmm. But one of the things, Glenn, I know we've talked about tons is change, and what change doesn't always feel good, but it spiritually is a fantastic thing. And, in the challenges, how we respond to that creates growth. It's like what I talked about, Ted. I don't know if you remember when we went to our family trip out west, and Yellowstone had all those forest fires.
Yeah.
And, there was big, huge devastation. But in the middle of that was the green undergrowth. And we know that that's a part of the biological cycle of life, too. But so those are the things we've been really talking about in the last couple of months is change and how that fits into a Christian life. But I'd love to hear just a little bit about a Granger church. And like I said, we know there's tons of transition there too, and how you can relate that maybe to where Northside Church is now.
Yeah, it's actually so funny to hear you guys talk about your church, our church, because that was my church.
Right.
Really, all I remember is Northside United Methodist Church growing up.
Right.
Because we moved when I was 7. And I was just commenting that I'm sure you guys know, you have books and books of detailed memories, I'm sure, before you were 7 years old, but my memory's not that good. And so just hearing you talk about our church, your church was my church. And so I do feel still, maybe I shouldn't, but I feel a connection to, and now I guess your former pastor. Change is so interesting because for whatever reason, God has always put me in places of change, sometimes to enact that change, sometimes to restore and heal. And the thing I've really realized about change is people aren't actually afraid of change. They're just afraid of loss. Oh. Because if $1 million showed up on your front door, that'd be a massive change, but you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm so scared.
Right.
I don't know what to do. So people don't fear change. They actually fear loss. It just gets wrapped up in this word change.
Kevin and I are hoping you'll kind of prove this point, kind of like a children's sermon. Send us $1 million and we'll report back. How about that?
Yeah.
We'll prove that
right.
Wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. I'll ask my congregation and see if they're up for that.
Well, do tell us a little bit. What are some of your fond memories of Northside when you were a kid? What do you remember? What are some of the things that you remember about being here in church when you were a kid, just to help make that connection for us as well?
Well, I remember when the gym was first built.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember when we had, several of the extensions, even just the parking lot in the front of the building.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. That's true. I remember.
The new sanctuary. I remember one of my fondest memories was when I could finally join the choir.
Oh, okay.
My dad and my mom, my older brothers, they were always part of the choir. And I was on the front. I was on the front row because they trusted me so much that they just wanted to see what I was doing. But when I could finally join the choir, I remember feeling, man, I'm somebody now. and it was just so fun to be a part of that group. Just some fun. I mean, all kinds of other things, but just some fond memories.
That's cool. That's really a lot of fun, though.
Yeah.
And so for those folks who may not be aware, Granger, you live in South Bend. Well, you actually live in Michigan now, but Granger Community Church is right outside of South Bend, Indiana. So tell us a little bit about your congregation, where you are now.
Sure. Well, where I live, it's called Michiana, it's on the border of Indiana and Michigan. And so you have about 4 different cities that just all run together. South Bend, Mishawaka, Granger, it even kind of bleeds over into Elkhart. It's just overall in the metropolis, we're talking a couple 100,000, but Granger in of itself is a tiny little unincorporated village, but outside of the actual limits, so to speak, you have Granger as an area that really has merged into this South Bend, Mishawaka, Notre Dame. It's where University of Notre Dame is. Mm-hmm. There's literally 3 or 4 colleges, universities right here in this area. Similar to Jackson, you guys got colleges everywhere.
Yeah.
So Granger Community Church, it is a church that was founded back in 1986 by a UMC pastor. It was the first church plant by the UMC in this area in about 40 years. And lots of history in that. But over the course of the last 30 years, in the first 20 years or so, it was one of the fastest growing churches in the country. Oh. And by far one of the largest UMCs in the country. Known for innovation, known for a bit of more of an attractional model. So it was a church that was really focused on those that aren't here yet. Mm. And so it wasn't as much about the membership. It was about who doesn't know about the hope of Christ. In fact, our founding pastor, he would go door to door in the early days and just ask people one question: why don't you go to church? Mm. And then he recorded all that and pretty much set out to do all the things that people said why they don't go. Just don't do them. Like, that was his strategy. Well, it's boring. It's not relevant to my life. I don't believe it's true. I just feel like an outsider. I mean, the list goes on. He said, well, we're going to be the unchurched then, I guess. We're just not going to do these things. And there was a lot of that heart from the beginning. As we stand now, as we're in this new chapter, for me, it's really what makes this church different. Not better or worse, all kinds of church to reach all kinds of people. But what makes this church different is we have an unwavering commitment for the lost, the broken, the unchurched, those that don't yet know the good news of Jesus Christ. And what that means, not just for a salvation moment, but what that means in the everyday practical life. An unwavering commitment to that, and an unwavering focus to our own personal deepening relationship with Christ ourselves. So often, churches, including our own, have gone through seasons of focusing on one more than the other, as opposed to truly modeling what Jesus did, I believe. And he was focused on the and. It's both. It is who is not here and is lost and broken, and I dare not ever lose my heart for those individuals. And at the same time, that should never replace or supplant my own personal journey with Christ. Deepening every day. And so if church is more towards, well, I just need to go deeper and just feed myself more. And, I'm not getting as much out of that sermon as I used to. And, I just need to get fed more. Well, all of a sudden, what ends up happening is, I think pride starts to develop in our hearts of we forget the rescue that we were given. And all of a sudden, our focus on ourselves actually denies the very thing that someone once gave to us. Where were we 10 years ago or 15 years ago when we first heard? And how do I have the right to withhold that news from my friends and my coworkers and my neighbors? I don't have that right. Yeah, but Ted, I just need to get deeper and just do more. Great, but that doesn't replace the heart of Christ for the exact message that you needed in your life and that someone gave you. Don't deny that for someone else. It's a hard road, but we're focused on the end. We really are.
Well, I love that dichotomy because there's this element of, you can't serve and speak to others without being healthy and well yourself. So there's personal discipleship, but there's also this focus on others. And I think a lot of times, myself included, will say, I'm not quite ready to share. I don't know enough, or, I'm not the best speaker, and those kinds of typical hesitations, I think, always come up. And so the end result is that we don't take action. We've talked about that, Glenn, plenty of times, is sometimes it just takes doing something to get us used to that. But I like what you're talking about in terms of focusing on both. And knowing you as I do, this and that you're saying trickles down to pretty much every single thing that Granger does, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a mission that's applied.
I mean, we're trying. There has been, I think, a season where some of the "and" has been assumed, and yet we are now. I mean, I am honestly this summer. I'm actually writing a 2025 vision, and we're going to be launching into a new season now that I've been in this role for a year. I feel like God's really been putting some things on my heart and our lead team's heart that we're ready to step into. Hey, this is what the next 3-4 years look like of where God wants to take us as a church and what our contribution is in our community. Other churches may be doing other things.
Right.
But this is what our contribution is going to be. And so one of those things is we have values that we want to be at every level in our organization. We're not going to overcomplicate it. I believe to be unclear is to be unkind. We're trying to simplify and clarify. People can't carry much in their mind and in their heart when it comes to vision. And so we have, 5 values, and we do 3 things. We talk about, we do 3 things. We do weekly gatherings, events, and groups. Everything falls underneath those 3 things. Because again, we want to be clear about our next steps as Christ followers that include both my personal relationship and owning to go and make. There's a difference when it's, well, you know what? Our church, our mission statement is helping people take their next steps toward Christ. We can say all day long, oh yeah, that's what we're going to do. And that's true. It changes the game though in each of our lives when it goes to, I must help someone take a step toward Christ. Not just we is great. We can do more than me, and all that is totally true. And until a switch goes on in my heart that I must, what if God has put me around these 3 people so that I'm actually responsible? God is so strategic. He actually put me there on purpose for those 3 people, because no one else can reach those 3 people the way that I can reach those 3 people. And I can pray all day long, God, but they don't know anything. And I think God just says, exactly. That's why I put you with those 3 people. And really trying to help people own the call and make the call as simple as possible. I just believe that individual ownership has been lost a lot of times with organized religion, which turns off so many people who right now in this world, they feel individually very causal. They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. And they see sometimes a large organization with bureaucratic hoops and all of that from the outside. They don't understand. And they're just like, I don't really want to do that. Even if what they're saying is true, like, why would, no, I'm going to make a difference. And from the beginning, you see Jesus empowering 2 by 2. That was mainly for safety, 1 by 1 eventually.
Yeah.
And so bringing some of that individual ownership and empowerment back for such a time as this in our culture, I think is exactly the right time.
Well, I think we've talked so many times about how quote unquote religion gets in the way of true faith.
Totally. Yeah.
And what you're saying to me sounds like that, the pastor, the lead pastor, the leadership has a role. There's no question that that's useful. And we're gifted differently. And so there's gifts of leadership and administration, but it's our chance, but not only chance, our responsibility to be hands and feet, to be the message to somebody else, to the people that are in our circle. And that doesn't mean that we're preaching on a street corner per se. It's the relationships we have. Glenn and I talk about all the time, barbecuing first.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to talk to someone about faith matters when you don't have a relationship with them, where you can't relate to them. Otherwise you're just talking at someone. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like what you're getting to a little bit.
Yeah. The kingdom of God, which includes the church, the kingdom of God grows one relationship at a time.
Yeah.
Over the course of church history, which I've studied some, the times in which the church has gotten off track, they have tried to replace relationship with some sort of system of growth strategy. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, brokenness in the world or brokenness in people is trying to be fixed with certain rules or certain systems of development, as opposed to trying to fix brokenness in the same way that brokenness began. And that is, people are broken because people break people. Someone broke that person. A lie that was out of someone's mouth, a belief from someone that they cared about, or an abuse or something. Brokenness comes through relationship. Healing also comes through relationship. Of course, first and foremost with God, but then with others. And whenever the church tries to shortcut relationship, it deviates from God's plan, in my opinion. And there's multiple levels of relationship, this individual aspect, life group or small group aspects, gatherings, all of that's important. But the church has often tried to speed up or rush or systematize or make an algorithm out of growth when Jesus was very clear. It's relationship and then probably some more relationship.
Right. Well, I love what you're saying and what you alluded to some things earlier about so often, because I've been on both sides of the stick too. I've been in the really big monster church with the biggest group in town and all that. And I've been in the small thing and been in every piece of it. And depending on where you are in that, sometimes you're the big guy, you look down on the little people down there. I'm the big church and you should come to me. And, you're the little guy, or you're somewhere in the middle and you're jealous because they're taking 400 kids to camp, and you're over here with your 14 and you're just like, oh, if I could only, only do this, only do that. But when you make it individual and you take the systems out of it, you take the signs from down in front of the churches, and we do our part. I love when you said, and Paul talks about how we are the body, and each part of the body is just as important as the other. No part is any greater. And so I love to hear that, because as you're undergoing through change, it's so easy to start, like you said, get that pride in your heart and start playing that game of comparison and who am I and who are we? And I think you're right. That people really turn off to the church, especially whenever they've had a time like COVID where they could sit at home and watch a billion different church services. I mean, I could have the 3 of the top preachers in the world preach to me and 4 of the top bands sing to me, on a Sunday morning, and all I got to do is sit there on my couch and flip the little flipper. So how are y'all looking now, speaking of change, coming out of COVID and getting back into community and moving along with a new vision? Did you receive this vision during COVID, or is this something that post-COVID you're receiving and developing because of the experience your church went through?
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. Kevin can speak more to that maybe some other time. My mind's kind of always going. So the antenna's kind of always up. I'm always receiving, always processing, always thinking. And then I just wait for God's timing, and he usually puts it all together at the right time for the right place. And so it's been a lot of insight over the last 18 years of my time as a participant of this church and volunteering for 10 years before I even came on staff, and all my other experiences and seasons of rapid growth and seasons of, plateauing or even some loss and leadership changing, and taking all that into consideration, along with some of my background as a social scientist and what's going on in our culture and community. I just believe that so often people forget that God is strategic. And when you look at, I have a very big passion for marketplace leaders and leading like Jesus in the marketplace. And when we are able to really see Jesus and God as strategic, now all of a sudden we can look at, okay, what did God do? He looked at where he was and who he had. Where he was, who he had, and what are the needs. And based on where he was and who he had, he was going to meet the needs in a particular way. And churches like this one, which we're the biggest one in town, et cetera, whatever, but it really is, okay, where are we? We're in the Midwest. This is Northern Indiana. Who do we have? And what does our community need? And really trying to take notes and jot stuff down and all of that. It's been an ongoing process. COVID, of course, gives all kinds of opportunities to stop doing some things that you should have stopped doing 5 years ago.
Right.
But now people will give you grace to stop it. And it also allows you to reimagine some things. So, for instance, we launched a whole new online initiative with a new position and all this stuff. We've been doing online for a decade. The new focus is No, everything's about relationship.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to build a relationship online? Not just consume. Most online is just about consumption. But faith is not about consumption. It's about relationship. So how do we do things like listen online?
Yeah.
Because in a relationship, you listen. You don't just talk. That's not a very good relationship. Don't point fingers, but there's some husbands and wives out there that could say amen to that. What does relationship look like online? Wherever we are, what does relationship look like? And so some of that, sure, COVID really brought that to the forefront. When you boil stuff all down, in all the different ways in which culture has changed in 2,000 years, it's still about relationship. How do we do relationship based on where we are, who we have, and what our community needs? So the vision, it's not like I climb Mount Sinai and I come down with a vision. There's a lot of prayer and processing. I have a lead team. I have a board of directors. I have different individuals, but God's been giving it to me off and on, and he's still not done yet. I have till the end of the summer, and one of the things about me is sometimes, fortunately or unfortunately, some of my best work is when the deadline's approaching. So I know it's not done yet.
Right. Well, one of the things that we're in, as we said before, is that pastoral search. And so we have a board of servant directors and board of elders, two leadership teams that are in charge of that. And now that we are not part of the denomination, that looks a little different for us. And I think, at least speaking for myself, I feel really good about the process here and how that's going. But you sort of went through a similar situation, a year ago, maybe 18 months? In terms of your lead pastor, your founding pastor was going to not be in that role anymore. And so that's, I guess hearing from you helps me feel confident that God's got it and is going to put the right person in that spot. But how did the congregation take that transition for you guys?
Well, it was very interesting because Mark, our senior pastor, founding pastor, the only pastor he was ever known here, he was in Israel, seemingly perfectly healthy with a group of 40 or 50 of our congregants. And then within a week of him coming back, he's told he has stage 4 cancer and we don't see him again in the office. So there was no, we're going to make this transition. There was no, we're going to leave the denomination. There was no forward plan.
Right.
And so the congregation was in like late 2019, and then he got sick really September, almost passed away actually in October, and we did like a celebration of his life and all that stuff in November, and then we saw some of the greatest growth in the last 5 years in December, January, February, and March. We were up to 7,000 a weekend.
Wow.
Going into COVID.
Wow.
And then COVID happened.
Right.
And everything got shut down. But amidst that process, there's this pastoral search happening in the background, and leaving the denomination was happening because he wanted to be able to choose our next leader, not have that be chosen for us, among other things. And the congregation, I think, because we had not been an overly denominational, it's not even in our name, overly denominational church, they've always trusted the lead pastor, the board or the ad council, and the lead team. It hasn't been as much of a denominational thing. So as they continue to see about 4 months worth of health and the church really not changing much, even though Mark wasn't here with us anymore, I think that really bred some trust going into COVID. And then Mark miraculously actually lived another year. I mean, he only passed away this past December,
right?
About 6 months ago. But he was no longer involved. No voice, nothing. And so I think trust is earned kind of one day at a time. And it was challenging, and yet the church really, I think, held on to what they have been used to. We continued on the weekends, biblical teaching, arts, innovation, stuff for every phase and stage of life. Students, all like they continued to experience the church that they knew, regardless of who was here, and that was really helpful during that time. And so now here we are. I became lead pastor about a year ago, And some changes happened immediately, but most significant change is actually only now starting to trickle in. Because again, the thing about change is you always have to be aware of that loss factor, and people were going to be assuming a lot of loss, and you want to mitigate that some. People can only handle so much loss at a time and at only such a frequency. So some people can handle one big loss, but you better not do that to me twice.
Yeah.
Some people, it's like, yeah, give me a little bit of loss all the time, and I'm fine. And so really getting a sense of our people in some of those arenas. We had some leader meetings. We do membership a little bit differently here, so it's not the same thing as like, hey, let's do the roll call. All the members be here Tuesday night. It's not that simple. We have vision nights and leader nights and things like that. But overall, I look back and go, our dependency on God was so apparent all the way up to the top levels. And we talked about all the time. We want to be in pace with the Spirit, not out in front, not behind. And we are radically dependent upon God. And that's a strong position. It's not a weak position.
Right.
If Jesus himself did not say anything unless he heard his Father say it, and he didn't do it unless he saw his Father do it, that's as radically dependent as possible. And by the way, he didn't sin. So strong position.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we wanted to do. And that was a day in, day out thing. And I mean, there was relationship mending that needed to happen in our staff team, on our lead team. And all of that was a whole lot of prayer and a whole lot of just listen and obey. What's today? Okay, here we go. So it was a challenging road, but God was with us.
I think that ties into your comment earlier about God being strategic. I think that in the moments when the sands are shifting, how do you stay afloat, so to speak? You grab on to, the things that are solid. You grab on to the relationships. You grab on to the truth that's, being shared even in the midst of maybe a leadership vacuum or something else. And that consistency holds you together. And it's just so clear to me as I get older about how we just miss the mark so much when we start talking about, and I'm not saying these things aren't important, but really focusing on when you're talking about church growth, we need this kind of program, or we need to have this kind of music, or this kind of thing, because that's what they're doing across the way. And they're big church, so we must need to do that in the same way. And it's really not about that at all. It's really about assessing what the needs are for our community. And like you said, Ted, what we have, and challenging ourselves to, rely on the Spirit for some guidance there, but to build something that if it doesn't fit the rules, but it fulfills the need, that's okay. And I think so many times we in Christianity, especially if we've been Christians for a long time, get stuck there and don't jump out of the boat, so to speak, to even have the chance to walk towards Jesus. We're just in the safe space. And I'm hoping that for our congregation, that this is that opportunity. Yeah. This is that moment to walk out in faith and maybe do something different. Because what I was going to say, Ted, is you talked about loss and change, that people are really afraid of loss. Does doing something new feel like loss sometimes?
It depends on how much you value stability and consistency and predictability. So for people like me who are risk takers, ENTP on Myers-Briggs and the 7 on Enneagram, I'm like, bring it on, baby. Let's change. Even if we don't need to change, let's change something,
Right.
But I realize I'm pretty weird. Most people, it all depends on how much of their full life standard relies on consistency, predictability, preparation, all of that. Because the degree to which you find hope, relief, and life in that consistency and routine is the degree to which change, regardless of what type of change, is going to feel like loss. And so it depends, which is why you got to be in a relationship with people to know how you're going to communicate change. I've communicated the exact same change in 10 different ways based on who I'm talking to.
Right.
Because I know I want them to hear what I want them to hear, not in a manipulative sense, but I just know some of their preconceived notions and some of the areas in which they may feel threatened or they may feel lost. And so all that takes some relationship. But again, in times of change, you look at when Jesus faced major decisions, one of the only consistent things we see throughout the Gospels that Jesus ever did was pray, taking time to pray. We see it whether he's exhausted, whether he's in a crowd or not. He takes time to pray. Sometimes it's out loud. Sometimes you hear the Father's voice. Sometimes you don't. All that stuff. But especially in moments of significant change, you see him pray. And so there's that. Again, if we're going through massive change, then let's look at what Jesus did in moments of his massive change. Sure, prayer, but look beyond that. See the relationship with his Father. And prayer was the mechanism, but it was all about connecting in relationship with his Father in a complete point of dependency, of trust. And so I think any significant change is just intended, in part at least, to draw us into closer relationship with the Heavenly Father, because that's what he did with his own Son.
Right.
And that leads us to a place, ironically, it leads us to a place of simplicity of, if I listen and I obey, I'm going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. I have to take time to listen. I have to be focused and listen, and I have to have the courage and the guts to obey.
Right.
Those are not trite things. But what if that's the only plan? There's something relieving about that amidst massive change.
Yeah.
And it's something that you're just going to have to try in order to have God show up.
Yeah. Well, that was fun.
Yeah. You ever feel like drinking out of a fire hose?
That, or maybe one of those airplanes that drops water on forest fires.
Right.
And you're just sitting there going,
How many 100,000 gallons can that drop at one time? I just love having conversations with him. Of course, I'm a little partial, but I think one of the cool things, and we'll talk a little bit more about this next time, I think, because we're going to continue the conversation, is that idea of fun. When something's fun, when something's exciting, it's shareable. You know, we talk a lot about, social media and how that's a part of our culture and our world. And I know we had some conversation, I think it's in the second half, about culture and what role that kind of plays in Christian life. That's something I think we should consider as Christians. You know, we talk about witness, that's, a fancy churchy word.
Yeah.
But our example, our life, our story, is there something that's appealing to somebody?
Yeah.
And ultimately, the story of Christ should be appealing. It's life-changing. It's something worth talking about. Mm-hmm. And so I can remember back when I was younger and various different, I don't know if it was youth programs or in camps or whatever, and you talk about how you craft your testimony and how you tell your story and those kinds of things. And it always sort of, when I thought about it, like, man, this sounds really complicated. It's like, I got to say it a certain way, or, I got to do this and do this and do this. And I was missing the point, obviously. Yeah. But it should be simple.
Yeah.
When it starts to be complicated, I always wonder, are we not where we're supposed to be? When we make it too complicated.
Yeah.
I don't know, and you can talk maybe about youth ministry. I know I've had conversations with folks, some of my friends, and things about, this church has this activity. And, my kids just like being there more.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate here is, at least in my experience, is that there's fun stuff to do, but it feels like we're focusing on the relationships a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Ted was saying, is that's ultimately what Jesus was all about.
Yeah.
He didn't type up a memo and give it to 12 guys and say, "Well, go just share this."
No.
Tell people about this and make sure you get the 3 points in, and we'll be good. He built those relationships with them.
Oh yeah.
Where they were, and each of them were totally different and unique and troublesome, and all
Very
that stuff. But he obviously cared enough to meet them where they were, and that is huge when it comes to building relationship with somebody.
Yeah. When I think of fun, I hope Northside's listening, because this is one of your sons that you just listen to. And I hope you're paying attention, because this is one of those kids that sat in your VBSs, that sat in your Sunday schools, that sat in your worship services, that was at your house, that was at your pool party. You know, this is one of those kids, excited and fired up and leading a congregation. They don't call them congregations up there. Leading those people and the friends around Granger into relationship with Jesus and getting them as excited as he is about. And that's fun for me. I know doing youth ministry so long, and I see these guys, I got kids that are in their 40s now that were almost my age. You know, I was young, and watching what they've done and watching, you know, some of them, they live all over the world, you know, and it's fun to see what those behind us are doing. And to me, just having this conversation was fun.
Yeah, you know, I think I've heard this before, is that the way you judge the effectiveness or the real heart of a person is by their fruit.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we talk about fruits of the Spirit all the time. Yeah. But if the fruits are there, that is the indication that there's good stuff beyond that on the inside where we all can't see. Yeah. Right? So if we're working on recognizing that fruit, cultivating, and using another gardening term, but cultivating the organism, the plant, the person to produce that fruit, then we're not missing the mark.
No. You stop and you think about the people in the lives of the people who are in Northside, who have been a part of Northside, no matter what stage of it they were, whether you were the little bitty church building or whether you were in the farmhouse or whether you're here now in the really nice facility, it doesn't matter where you are. Someone in that zone was creating a relationship with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was very evident to me in 2000, 2001, when we even just started visiting here, much less thinking about being a part of this. You know, it's a relational place. You know, there's people put in your way to help you in that gardening and to help you water the seed and do all that stuff. And it is very intentional about that, and has always been, in my understanding and experience and listening and watching people like y'all. And, you know, that's exciting. That's exciting. And I want to go to something you said a while ago about, my kids want to go there, you know, and that we've been that place a little bit, and we've also are a victim of those places. Right. No. I mean, I don't know if that's about, but what happens is, you know, churches and youth people, and they start looking at numbers.
Yes.
And they start looking at their theology is one more in the kingdom. Mm. And then when they're 16 and they make a really bad mistake, not every church now, don't get me wrong, not every church. Right. But so many are like, oh, well, you know, sorry.
What can we do about that?
You need to rededicate. You need to give your life. You didn't do it right the first time. And that sounds very theological and very callous, but it's also very real. And our theology is, let's just walk through it all. The nasty, the ugly, the fun, the wonderful, you know, let's do it all. So we do a little bit of everything. We do the crazy big event type thing. People don't respond to that quite like they used to. That used to be a lot easier to do. But folks, there's a lot of stuff going on, and people are going to respond to that kind of thing. Now, you can't ever out-church friendships.
Yes.
So if someone, you're tight friends and you're going with their friend, I hate that, you know, because you wish you had the opportunity to really spend some time helping them, you know, and why don't you bring your friends here? Mm-hmm. That says something more about the personality than it does about the programming.
Sure.
And so it's tough a lot of times. And it's tough for me because in a community the size of Jackson, you just wish that would never happen, because Jackson's not as big relationally as it thinks it is and acts like it is sometimes.
Right.
And so that does create a lot of hurt in the community and at schools and stuff. You know, we got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But that's a real thing, you know, and it's a real divisive thing. And
yes.
I wish there was some cultural shift that we could do within parenting or something or to hang them. But, you know, we're all susceptible to that at some level and some point.
Well, so. and I think one of the things I heard Ted say is that we have to just keep repeating the message. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure that the vision is consistent, all of those things. Speak the truth.
Yeah.
And wherever the chips fall is where they're going to fall. Trust that God's going to do something. I like what he said about just, I want to be more usable.
Yeah.
And that's really just a focus on making sure that we're right. We have that right relationship and that we're open And then that we have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Like you started out, that we must do something. And it's not that we must do something because we're being forced to.
Yeah.
Or someone won't live if we don't. No, we must because the message is that important.
Yeah.
To us.
Paul talks about that in Galatians and Ephesians of we serve. It's because you have just this overwhelming desire that you must serve. You must tell the good news. You must. It's not a rule. It's just that there is no other option for you.
Right. And it's the faith without works comment too.
Exactly.
If the relationship is right, if the faith is there, if you have that Christness in you, then it's just going to happen. You won't be able to help yourself from doing things.
Yeah.
That could be showing kindness.
Yeah.
It could be starting a ministry to help tons and tons of people. But it's that just the beauty of the way God created this relationship is that you just can't help yourself from doing something.
Yeah.
And I just, we talk about the word revival, and I think sometimes it's got this connotation where, it's going to be a crusade. It's going to be a Billy Graham thing, right? Yeah. And tons of people are going to be saved. And I want that to happen, but it's about a refreshing of fire in us, in each of us, one person at a time, so that we can be in that place where we just can't help but share what's going on.
It's good stuff. Well,
Man,
if we
really
keep
good.
talking, we're not going to have any for next week. And so,
what kind of activities we got coming up?
This is not as easy as Patrick makes it look. And so, I hope he's enjoying his honeymoon while we're over here slaving away for him. Well, guess what? Northside is returning to the Holy Land. Pastor Gary is planning on March 25th to April 4th in 2022 of taking another trip over to the Holy Land. And so if you are interested, there are flyers around the church, and that's where I grabbed this as I was walking by. I knew he was looking at doing this, but he's got up flyers. And just contact Pastor Gary. If you're interested in going to the Holy Land, we're here with the church. I'm sure he's got an informational meeting coming up sometime soon. I do not see that anywhere, but he can get that to you and stuff. But get with Pastor Gary and see, if you're in, and I would love to do that trip at some point.
Yeah, I would too.
Oh goodness, that would be fun. Barbie and I would really like to do. That's one of ours we'd love to do together.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And stuff, that'd be fun. But we bought a house. So, we're going to have some fun this July because we're going to be picking up toys for our local first responders and bringing change for a baby bottle campaign that we did through Birth Choice a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And this is all from the outreach. This is our thing we're going to be doing in July for this quarter. And so we're going to be bringing, when fire department, police department, those guys show up. Yeah. One, they never know exactly what they're getting into.
Right.
And so often there are kids involved.
Sure.
And I know so many of them, and they say, it's just so nice to be able to reach in the trunk or the back seat or wherever they carry them at and say, hey, here's a little football or here's a little doll or something. And it allows the kid to kind of have something to calm them and give them something to focus on when life is not necessarily going just great and they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah,
and,
not in that moment.
It helps the officers, the law enforcement, it helps the fire department, it helps all the first responders, but it really helps those students. So they're asking you all of July to, they've made it fun.
Good.
Can you believe that? They've made it fun.
That's great.
This is a contest.
Okay.
And we've done this before. And adults, y'all got whipped up on by the children last time. I do remember this now. This is a contest with the children and the youth versus adults.
Okay.
The children and youth versus the adults bring the most toys. So there's going to be a drop-off box in the mission boxes. There's going to be an adult box and a children/youth box during July. I think around the mission area or Narthex area or somewhere like that. So things like small trucks, cars, tractors, action figures. Ooh. Could bring my favorite wrestling action figure or something.
So we could go over to Patrick's house and pick up an action figure.
We could. Let's do that while he's on honeymoon. That way.
That's kind of breaking and entering though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is. And he's got some that might not want to be just given away.
I'm sure that's
some
true.
kid sitting there with a vintage a vintage Luke Skywalker going, "This is so great. I'm running through the mud." Patrick would have a heart attack if he knew we were talking about this.
Oh, I know.
Small stuffed animals, balls, Nerf or full size. Any type of ball would be good. Barbie dolls, small dolls, puzzles, games, stickers, bubbles, Legos, coloring books, and crayons. Any type of small toy. Remember, they want to be easy to hold for a child. Will bring comfort to a child, boys and girls of all ages. Don't forget those older children and the younger youth. And nothing that requires a battery or a toy gun.
Yes.
Most of the time they've seen enough violence going on right there.
Right.
And then the baby bottle campaign, it's not a contest, but we did this and you bring enough change to fill up a baby bottle. You pick up these baby bottles, fill them with change and return them back. And then they go to Birth Choice, and Birth Choice empties and everything and whatever we give from the church goes directly to Birth Choice. And it's really a neat thing. And it was really kind of cool to learn how much we picked up, and this is all during the month of July as well. You can bring your bottle, or you can even place an offering plate on Sundays or bring it to the church during the week. So you can bring checks and those kinds of things. So
cool.
We have those things. And of course, VBS is, right now it's like we're just breathing on it.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming up. In August, we'll have green sheets and a lot more. So it's about to get wild again.
It's going to be great. Well, that's the thing I can always count on. There's always something going on. It's not like during the summer we take we all need to take our moments to rest and recharge, but the work of God is never done.
Oh, never takes a break.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thanks for podcasting with us all, everyone. And Patrick, we hope that you're listening to us wherever you are on your honeymoon. And if you're not, make sure you listen soon. Again, like he says, like and subscribe, leave comments and give us a podcast at northsidejackson.com. We're on Instagram and all of that. So definitely check us out. And we would love to hear from you. And tune in again next week, because we were going to continue this conversation with Pastor Ted, one of Northside's youngins, all grown up, leading his own group of people.
That's right.
Pretty cool. So thanks for joining us here at Northside Now, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.